Hey guys, so for this video I'm going to be doing a movie review of An American Werewolf in London. I know it's, a popular movie, so I thought I'd go ahead and watch it. And so the movie starts out in England. These two Americans are backpacking through the countryside. And so it starts getting dark, and so they stop at the Slaughtered Lamb, a pub along the way, and let's just say the pub goers were not welcoming at all. It's obviously just wanted them to leave, and but the friend, there's Jack, and then there was David. Jack is the dumbass, and he keeps pushing and pushing and pushing the pub goers when it's so obvious they don't want them there, and they're just so hostile, but he's just a dumbass, and so eventually they end up leaving. And yeah, they get attacked on the countryside, despite being warned to stick to the road, and to beware the full moon. The idiots go off the road, off the path, and get attacked, which I don't know why staying on the path had any, was it supposed to protect them because it's enchanted, or is it essentially just, just decrease the chance of the werewolf coming out into the open to attack them. So yeah, they get attacked, and Jack, the friend, he is killed. David then gets attacked, but then villagers come in time to kill the creature, but David isn't, injured, and he ends up getting taken to the hospital. Before he gets taken to the hospital, he sees the creature transform back into a man, and then he essentially passes out, and he has these visions of him running naked through the forest. And then he wakes up in the hospital, where there's an inspector. He's investigating what happened. And so the investigator said that he was attacked by a escaped lunatic, but David insists it was an animal. I mean, yes, definitely, he would believe it's an animal, right, when it's literally has claw marks, right? It's not made by knives or anything. It was literal claw marks, and you think people, this dude's dumb enough to fall for your bull. But yeah, he is visited by the ghost of Jack while in the hospital, who insists that he has to kill himself because he's been cursed, and all the other people who the werewolf has killed are cursed until the curse is broken by the werewolf being killed. Of course, David either thinks he's going crazy or just doesn't want to do it. I think it's more the former. The doctor that treats David, he somewhat is interested, I guess, in David's story, so he ends up going back to the slaughtered lamb. And of course, he's about as welcome there as David and Jack were. And so, I mean, hell, they even denied knowing David and Jack, and denying they were there. But of course, once the doctor leaves, one of the patrons ends up meeting him outside of the pub to kind of warn him about Jack, and that he needs to be killed. Before, of course, he get yelled at by the other pub goers. So David ends up getting released from the hospital, and he ends up starting to live with one of the nurses, Alex Price. Long story short, they bang. And then she says he's worried about his mental state because, well, he keeps imagining his dead friend is there. So one night, there is a full moon, and of course he transforms. Then he hunts the London Underground and ends up killing 6 people. He then wakes up in a zoo with the wolves, and he doesn't remember what happened, But apparently, he didn't really think it was that big a deal. He woke up naked in a wolf cage, in the wolf enclosure in the zoo. He doesn't immediately go to the doctor. He just goes back home. And and so yeah, Alex ends up meeting with the doctor because he's worried about David. He thinks there's something up with him. He does. I'm not sure if he necessarily believes he's a werewolf. He says that David believes he's a werewolf, and I'm not sure if he was implying that maybe his body is changing, going through some change at least because he thinks he's a werewolf, or if he literally is just implying that. Because I'm not sure. So far, I think that he didn't really see him as dangerous. He just was worried about him, wanting to get him help. But Alex ends up getting him into a cab to go to the doctors, and so David is kind of none of why he's willing to go along with it. But then the dumbass Cappy, of course, they have to reveal the people that have been killed by this something. And that's when David finally believes that he's a fucking werewolf. So, yeah. It's too bad the cabbie, was there to reveal that people were killed so that he can then escape just as they're trying to get him help. Of course, he tries to go to a police officer to arrest him and tells him that he's responsible for the killing. And he happens to find one of the only police officers who doesn't automatically kill you for pretty much doing anything, talking to them. But then again, this was London, and so they're sane. They apparently, don't carry guns around. Until it's something like a werewolf comes along, and that's when they'll pull out the entire arsenal. But yeah, anyways, the officer doesn't believe him, and he ends up running away. He calls his family in America, telling him that he loves them, because he's wanting to commit suicide, but he ends up chickening out. He can't do it. And he ends up following Jack's ghost into this adult movie theater, where he sees his victims, and they start talking to him and guilt tripping him, and then they start coming up with ways that he can kill himself. The thing is, it seemed like David didn't want to hurt people, but he still went into a theater where there were people, when knowing he might transform, and yeah, he ends up killing them. So it kind of was counterproductive. But yeah, he transforms into a werewolf. He ends up escaping the theaters. Then, kills a police officer along the way, kills some more people, causes an entire, traffic, huge crash, I guess. And then, the police finally come, cornering him in an alley, and, of course, Alex thinks she can talk him down, so she just goes running up to him, and of course, he lunges at her, and they have to end up shooting him. And she cries, and that's it. And yes, it was that abrupt. It felt very much, I guess, anticlimactic. So that was a movie. Now, they did have a radio dramatization of it. I think it was British, from Britain. It is available on YouTube, so if you want to go listen to it, you can. I actually did like that. I actually listened to the radio dramatization because I think it expands more on some of the scenes so that you can really connect more with the story. It kind of fills in some of the plot holes. For example, David, he wanted to go with Alex in the movie, and it felt so abrupt. But then in the radio dramatization, he and Alex kind of get closer because she's the one who takes care of him, trying to get him to eat and stuff while they're there. And she also is I guess, helping him through the nightmares he keeps having. And he does ask her if he can go home with her. But then he talks about how he is afraid of going to sleep because of the nightmares. So I felt like that was a little bit more of a rational reason for why he wouldn't go home with her. Of course, I knew it was probably also he wants to bang her, but still, it was a little bit more. And the villagers in the movie, I think they just had those two scenes, when he's in the beginning, when they go into the pub, and then later on, when Doctor comes. In the radio dramatization, they have more scenes, and we hear them arguing, because some want to go, at the beginning, they wanted to go after Jack and David to stop them from going, to save them. And then some others don't. Because apparently one of them, I think he might have been like the village leader or something. He turns out the creature that attacked David was actually his brother. And so they wanted him to kill him to break the curse. But I guess he didn't have the nerve to do it. And so he ostracizes him from the village, and of course he eventually transforms and attacks people. And so we finally, he goes after David and Jack. He goes after him and eventually kills a creature, aka his brother. And so he kind of thinks that's the end of it, but of course David is now infected, cursed. The villagers, deny that they actually knew David and Jack, and pretty similar to, what happens in the radio drama too, but then also later, towards the end, we get them kind of having this guilty conscience, and they trying to push the elder to go after David to take care of him, because he's going to kill people. And so he ends up coming at the very end, the main villager, the head villager, the one who wouldn't kill his brother and stop the curse. And yeah, he does die at the end in the radio dramatization. I can't remember if he does in the movie, but it was kind of this whole circle. He didn't kill his brother because to end the curse, and he eventually, I think he kind of is the reason for why David ends up dying, because he kind of goes after David and he attacks him, and they end up like shooting him. And so yeah, I just think that they expanded it a lot more in the radio dramatization than they did the movie. Of course, there was a bit more comedy, I think, in the radio dramatization, because we get a scene where Jake, he finally wakes up after being killed by the monster, the werewolf, and so he's like screaming, and we hear the screaming, and then it just morphs into a oh shit. It was just so random, and it was just kind of low-key funny. But yeah, it's kind of like things like that, these small humorous moments that I felt made it feel more like a horror comedy than the actual movie did. The one thing I also liked about the radio dramatization is that it knew what kind of medium it was. So it knew that it doesn't have visuals, and so you kind of have to rely on other things to kind of tell the story. So we get a lot of sounds indicating where they were. So like we get they're in the subway tunnel, and so we get these like echoing sounds, let you know that they're helping you picture them in a subway tunnel. And then of course, when he's transforming, he is transforming, and then his scream slowly morphs into a growl of the werewolf. So great way of kind of helping you picture. And then there's this guy in the subway and he's singing, he's like a, magician, trying to earn money as a musician in the subway. And so, once again, it kind of makes you picture it. But, of course, one of the things, during the transformation, he has to kind of tell you what's going on, so he'll describe what he's feeling as he's changing, which, I mean, that's kind of the only way you can do it, but still, felt kind of cheesy. So, the writer and / director for this movie originally wrote the story in 1969 while he was working in Yugoslavia, after he stumbled upon a group of Romanian people who were doing rituals over the dead so as to stop him from rising from the grave. And it gave him idea for the character who had to confront the undead. It was eventually just shelved for over a decade because the financier didn't believe that the financier believed it was too scary to be a comedy and too funny to be a horror movie. Which it's so ironic. The director, of course, went on to do, other things. He eventually did The Blues Brother, which kind of helped him, or not only The Blues Brother, but the National Lampoon's Animal House. And that kind of gave him some leeway, I guess, when it came to deciding what he wanted to do. And so he was finally able to get money to finance this movie. Universal wanted him to cast the actor from Blues Brothers, of course, because they wanted to get a draw from that movie, which it just annoys the shit on me when studios just try to cast actors not based on whether they can act or they're right for the part, but whether or not they can, whether or not they're popular. And I feel like it just ruins movies. But yeah, the director kind of rejected that and he decided to go with 2 unknown actors instead. So the American Werewolf in London, it was the first film to be allowed to be filmed in the, Piccadilly Circus in 15 years. And, the director ends up accomplishing, this by inviting 300 members of London's Metropolitan Police Department, or service, to a screening of his new film, The Blues Brothers, and apparently they were so impressed by the movie that they granted the production a 2-night filming permit between the hours of 1 and 4. So they essentially were able to film there because the police liked his movies. Of course, it ended up being a critical and financial success. And it won the 1981 Saturn Award for Best Horror Film and the Academy Award for Best Makeup. The first of its kind. And yeah, I do believe it deserved it. That transformation scene was very, very impressive. Really care for and so, yeah, I'm sure I can go watch a documentary on how they did it, and I kind of want to whenever I go and watch it, because, yeah, that was impressive, especially for that time period. So the reception for the movie, it was released in August 21st, 1981. It grossed $30 million at the box office. in the United States and 62 million worldwide under a budget of $6 million, which, so obviously it made it made a shit ton of money for the budget that it had. A lot of critics said it was funny, although I like I said, I didn't think it was funny. I mean, there are horror comedies I think are funny. This one, I didn't get so much of a horror or a comedy aspect of it. Of course, Robert Ebert's review was not as favorable. He gave it 2 out of 4 stars and said that it's seemed curiously unfinished, as if the director spent all his energy on spectacular set pieces and then didn't want to bother with things like transitions, character development, or an ending. Yeah, that's what I noticed. I will agree that the ending felt so abrupt. You know, he just dies and that's it. And then, of course, the character development I don't think was there either. We don't really get them changing throughout the movie. They just start and end the same way. So yeah, I will agree with them on that. So director Edgar Wright, he did Shaun of the Dead. He cited the movie as a major inspiration for his own filmmaking and a milestone in the genre. Rolling Stone's Joshua Rothkamp, writing on the 35th anniversary of the film's release, called it an allegory of externalized Jewishness. This is embodied by the character of David and his growing awareness of his otherness as a werewolf alongside his own outsider status as a Jewish American in England. Hiding a secret deep within one's body, strange urges, xenophobic glances, accusatory feelings of guilt. David's condition already had a name, and this won't be the first film in which Jewish otherness is made monstrous. The movie, I didn't really get the fact that he was Jewish. I think maybe once, maybe twice, I heard of it and kind of realized they do it a lot more, I feel like, in the radio dramatization. So Michael Jackson, who was a fan of the film, chose John Landis to direct and Rick Baker to do the makeup effects for his '83 Thriller music video, because of their work on the movie. So I mean, I can definitely see that Thriller video. I like Thriller, the video too. So there was going to be a sequel. Actually there was The American Werewolf in Paris. Of course, it was released by Disney in '97 because they have to ruin everything. It was a box office flop, and critics hate it because, well, one, they got a completely new cast because, you know, one thing studios are very good at is kind of coming to the wrong conclusion as to why a movie is popular. So they'll take aspects of the first movie and completely shit all over it, and then expect it to be the same success. There has been talks about a sequel involving people like Max Landis, the original director's son, but after accusations of emotional and or sexual abuse by multiple women, that did not pan out. And then there's also Robert Kirkman, the creator of Walking Dead, who was also rumored to be involved in the reboot, but obviously it did not work. And I don't know where, as of now, if that's ever going to happen, but... So Rick Baker, he did the effects for this movie. His filmography is pretty fascinating. He did Track of the Moon Beast. He did Squirm, Incredible Melting Man. He did the Star Wars movies, Thriller, Mighty Joe Young. I'm not sure if it was the old Mighty Joe Young or the new one, I love the new one. I'm assuming it was the old one. He did the Haunted Mansion, which I can, kind of a childhood movie of mine. Then he also did The Ring and Maleficent. So yeah, he has some movies under his belt, and so. But yeah, that was pretty much my, kind of thoughts on the movie. It wasn't that impressive to me. Before you get mad, I'll acknowledge this was in the 70s. I didn't see it as a child. And I've been, I guess, over in just the werewolf genre has been so overdone, I guess, that it's really hard for me to, I guess, be impressed by them now. I will admit, the transformation scene, it was very, I guess, unsettling. The werewolf itself was very ugly. Not the effects or anything, but just the wolf itself. And yeah, that probably because that came out in like the 70s, right? And now they've been more romanticized, I feel. And so they're made to be a lot more attractive. I still love the transformation scenes from the Underworld movies. The werewolf transformation scenes a lot more. I think they're my favorite transformation scenes. That and Trick or Treat. Those are my two favorites. The acting itself, I wasn't that necessarily impressed with. Story, of course, there were so many holes, and it felt so rushed, and so I couldn't really get into the stories. And the thing with me, I really need to get into the story to at least be interested in it. The characters, I have to really be invested in the characters. They have to give me something to be interested in them and make them feel like actual people to me so that I can care about them. And they really didn't have any of that for me, so I guess overall, I guess this movie was a letdown for me. But I'm sure it's there's other people who love it. So that was my review of The American Werewolf in London. So if you did like the video, give a like, subscribe to get all the videos I'll be doing, notification for all the videos I'll be doing, and you guys have a nice night. Stay safe out there. I'll talk to you.